Hello, 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 and good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever you are in the world today. Welcome to a brand new social Confoes. And everybody that's tuning in, of course, a happy Chinese New Year as well. Diego, how are you, man?
Chu Yeah, I've been brushing up my Chinese. I think you just muted yourself, but yeah,
How's your Chinese going so far?
it's all right. So it's the lunar festival, right? So New Year you say um, 新年快乐, but in this case, I think the correct one is 祝节快乐. And yeah, to everybody, a happy Lunar New Year. And we are bright and early today with our social convos because something's happening tonight, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, sorry about that. So we're changing to our guest settings for European guests and guests outside of Suriname due to the fact that I have to be in the stadium, the Asset Stadium, later today for the match between Suriname and Guyana because our national selection is playing against Guyana. So that's the main reason that I asked you and asked our guests, like, can we do the European time zone edition of Social Confoes, because I can't be at two places at once.
Well, good thing our friend has some experience abroad as well, so this should be fine. But let's get straight into it. So today we have, I almost said tonight, how used to that I am. Yeah. This evening we have with us Timothy Goudzand, and I first encountered Timothy, I think a few weeks ago when I was Stilmer. Our common friend Devin sent me at least a Twitter space invite, and I just had enough reception to join in the session. And I hear these guys talk about Web3, climate change, and usually since Suriname is so small, usually if someone is remotely active in the space, you kind of know about them or know them through some of the mutual friends or mutual connections. But I've never seen or heard about Timothy before, and it's quite. I listened in, quite interesting concept that these guys had, and we'll dive a bit deeper into how he sees that Web3 and climate change can mesh together, and what he's planning with his um, startup Infinity. So Timothy, welcome to Social Convos, and
Hey
can you
guys.
tell us why haven't we seen you or heard from you before?
Well, that's very easy to explain. First of all, thank you for having me. And Happy New Year, Chinese New Year, Lunar New Year to everyone else. Well, first of all, I'm a very introverted person. So I like being to myself. And I'm social when it comes to my inner group, but outside of that, I don't really like to join a lot of groups or teams or just like chats like the Telegram group chat. I don't usually do that, but ever since I've been busy with this project, I've come to learn that it's really good for people to see the face behind the product or the initiative or the company. Because also what we're busy with, I think it has to do a lot with trustworthiness. And yeah, so that's why I'm making my grand entrance, so to say.
It's funny because I do know Timothy. I don't know him with long hair. Somebody mentions, "Hey, Tim with the long hair." So I've seen. Sorry, I'm playing around with the settings a little bit. I have seen some of your interviews.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if it's Apache, if I remember correctly. Uh,
could be, yeah,
yeah,
could
where
be.
you, sorry, where you interviewed a lot of professionals, Surinamese professionals, talking about opportunities, how to improve, but also talking about leadership and improving in life. Am I correct or not?
Yeah, you're correct to some form. Yeah,
So
that's
can you
true.
take
That's
us a
true.
little bit through the journey of because what we're going to talk about today is for a lot of listeners kind of new, it's kind of meta, but maybe you can tell people a little bit of about your journey, because I do actually know things that you have done in the past. So I'm really interested to know how we got to this version towards Web3 and climate change.
Oh, that's interesting, right? It's like basically a tell-all book, the autobiography. But so I'm from my background perspective, I'm into business, business management. I've always been kind of like a salesperson, and ever since I was young, I was always trying to be entrepreneurial, even back when I was 14 or 16 years old. That's why I think if you go on my LinkedIn page, the first thing that I listed was working at the Surinamese Department of American Chamber of Commerce, because normally people at my age don't try to work in the summer for such a corporate setting. But I always was interested in trying to create businesses, not only because I didn't want to work for people, but just because I wanted to do what I believed in. That was that was supposed to happen. And after a while, after I graduated high school, I went to the Netherlands to study. I did international business management and international finance management, but I didn't feel like I fit in with the community there, like with the way society was working, with the pace, with everything. It just wasn't a good fit for me. Like I felt lost at the end of the day, right? So I came back to Suriname. And basically, my parents were like, okay, you could come back. That's no problem. But what are you going to do? And that's when the whole process of me trying to find out what is it that I'm going to do started. And it took years, right? It's a process. And I don't think I'm done yet, but I definitely feel like I've come a long way and I'm on the right journey. But with that being said, so yeah, I started dibbling and dabbling in a lot of things that caught my attention. I love being creative, busy with media. So at one point, I joined a marketing agency where I got to kind of learn about the ins and outs of that. I worked at SRB just because I was interested in just the whole process of a Surinamese owned alcoholic brand that's fully Surinamese owned, that's produced here, all of that. So that was interesting, and just yeah, it's just trying to experience as much as possible and seeing what works and what doesn't work for me, basically, and trying to find the truth within all of that.
So you've dabbled quite a bit locally, at least in the corporate world of Suriname, and yeah, it's a stark difference if you look at the pace in Europe, the Netherlands, uh, and yeah, I kind of had a similar vibe just visiting. I didn't study in Netherlands, but just visiting, you can
Yeah,
feel that rush life, and that
exactly.
punctuality. But from your experience or your journey here in Suriname, especially in the corporate world, I'm curious to know if there's any, for locals and having an
Mhm.
outside perspective, anything in particular that people have a misconception about from the corporate world in Suriname, or something that you yourself found surprising.
Mm, let me see. The culture differs, right? And I think maybe the biggest misconception would be that the core yeah, I don't know how to formulate it, but it's I think a lot of people think that the corporate world in Suriname is a lot of steps behind into what is happening in for example developed countries such as the Netherlands or America, right? And it is true to a certain extent, but I feel like we aren't that far behind, at least the companies where I worked at. And I must be honest, they're big companies such as Fernandez or Digicel or SIB, but we're on the right track when it comes to that part. But you do see cultural differences. For example, when we take breaks and the way that we act when it's a break, right? And for example, in the Netherlands, it's just totally different vibe. It's the way they do that, they go on about that, and what they do with that time is way more productive than, for example, what we do in certain. Because we're really just gonna eat and drink until it's time to go back and sit. Whereas in the Netherlands, I have a feeling they try to maximize that 15 or 30-minute break to the fullest. So that's the biggest difference. It's just culturally, like the company culture, everything. It's I think it represents and the actual country itself.
It's funny that you mentioned that because not only like the people that work there try to maximize it, but the company as well. It
Yeah,
even
that's
got to a
true.
point now where there's kind of a law in the Netherlands where you're not allowed as a company to pay a certain amount of lunch for your employees because they
Wow,
were searching how can we maximize the fact that the company can pay lunch for the employees and kind of maximize that financially. And then the
it's
government said
crazy.
like, wait a minute, you can't do that because it was going to a further extent. So the efficiency thing is interesting. You saw me laughing when you mentioned that because for
Yeah,
us it's like lunch. Yeah, where are we gonna go? We can't send somebody out for an hour to get lunch for us, and
exactly.
everybody just waits until the lunch arrives, and nobody
Yeah,
works until the lunch is there. So basically the 1 hour break becomes a 2 hour break. So
exactly.
definitely, but then again, you've also seen what you liked about the corporate world and what you didn't like about the corporate world, not just in the Netherlands or in Suriname. So what do you think that the first question for me is, do you think it's finding out what you don't like? Do you think it's a personal thing? To what extent is it a personal thing? And what to what extent is it for you a generational thing in the way that working is being perceived?
First off, I do think it's a personal thing, and I believe that's the journey that you go through life, right? Is trying to find what works for you and what doesn't, right? Because certain people need, for example, a micromanager because they themselves don't have the discipline or the necessary tools to manage their own like set of work that they have to do, right? But for me, I'm the type of guy that if you micromanage me, I can't work. I can't perform for you because I don't have the freedom to figure out how I could deliver the end result, right? So it's like small things like that it's a personal journey. And but I think it's only 50% because I do think the times are changing. And I think especially the last 2 years that we've seen that the need for how we go on about working with each other, for example, within a corporation, that that wasn't as efficient as was supposed to be. So I think even in that sense, it's changing for a lot of people. And what I've noticed also is a lot of my peers being at home the past few years or year and a half, they kind of started thinking about ways that they could basically be independent workers, more contractor based than actually work full time for a company, which I think is going to be a trend the coming years. So it's interesting, but I think at the end of the day, it's 50-50. 50% is a personal experience, and 50% is what happens at the actual workplace and how those things be effective.
Speaking of those changes and experiences you had personally, I'm wondering where this passion for climate change came into play. Was it during your trajectory in the corporate world? Was it pre that? Or how does that mix that you saw like, no, something's got to be different? Or
Yeah.
how did it play out?
We got to change. Yeah. So I think first off, I grew up with a dad. Like my father is a guy that loves nature. So every time that he has a chance to go into the interior or just go fishing, he always goes. So of course, growing up, I thought that was one of the coolest things ever, going fishing, being on the river. And then you start to appreciate nature in a certain manner. But it is true. It wasn't until I was into like the corporations here. I was part of how they operated that I started to learn about the damages being done to our country, right? And the amount of zero care that we have towards the climate and what is happening with that. So that started the rabbit hole basically for me. But also, it was part of the fact that I was trying to find reason in what I was going to do further with my life, right? It's like I was trying to find a way to implement change, but kind of having that as a main job. So with it was just that idea of, hey, I think I could do something to help better the climate adaptation within the country. But it was just seeing all these things, seeing how people didn't care like putting money over long-term effects, basically, because a lot of people in their head, especially in countries such as Suriname, where we have an abundance of like well-preserved nature, right? We kind of have this idea like, yo, if we have this gold mine now, I mean, eventually trees will go back, but it's not that simple. And that's what I kind of learned. So it was a rabbit hole of learning how much of our forest is actually just given away and is in hands of the private sector, right? And they could basically do a lot with that power. So it was just a rabbit hole, learning more stuff, and just that changed my mindset.
So quickly on that, like I'm gonna jump straight in because it's really interesting. So, of course, there are different approaches to kind of dealing with these economics versus nature kind of things.
Yep.
And for those of let's kind of, especially for those who are listening, whether it's live or in the recording that are from outside of Suriname, they kind of don't have the scope on what kind of nature destruction is going on in our country. But there are two things that for me are kind of considered solutions. One is
Mhm.
preservation. You really preserve and you kind of bring things in place to kind of preserve. And the other one is restore through innovation. So you find innovative ways on parts of nature that have been completely destroyed and you kind of rehabilitate it. So if you had to go for a strategy for Suriname, for would you go for a preservation strategy, saying like, hey, we should preserve our rainforest, or would you go like, maybe we can go the innovative route and kind of restore what has been destroyed?
Yeah, so I think it's a great question. So what I'm focusing on is using innovation to preserve. And that's a concept that people really haven't tried to develop, right? Is how could we use these technological advancements that are being made and are to be made? How could we use that somehow to really preserve that first of all the nature that we have? How could we preserve that? And then you could start looking at how could we regenerate these plots of lands that have been destroyed completely, because that's also a different thing. All those gold mines that we have that are basically small companies that don't really care about nature, they're useless. They're you can't do anything on those pieces of land. You have to invest a lot of money to regenerate it, to bring back that piece of nature that you destroyed. But yeah, to answer your question, is using innovation in order to preserve.
I want to scope this out a bit, but usually we're very focused on, Suriname. I think it's 93% most forested country in the leaderboards. But if you look scope out, we're just a small patch from the whole Amazon. If you look at
Exactly.
Brazil, Venezuela, Guyana, that whole front. So this brings me to wonder, even if you have all these innovative solutions for implementation locally or preservation, how do you see this ripple out to a broader extent uh, without necessarily having too much pressure from uh, countries like Brazil with their policies and the other countries? How do you see um, that innovation for preservation of the nature
Mhm.
go beyond just Suriname?
So first off, it would have to be that the model works, right? And that would mean that the model has economic incentives. That's something that I discovered also, is that people won't really care unless they get paid for it or there's a way that they could earn more money with it. So that is why we're looking at technology such as Web3 and just the blockchain in essence, in creating and being open and safe, so secure with the way that we go on about creating that economic incentive. And secondly, that same technology gives you the ability to scale basically to an infinite number in that sense, right? But the strength also lies in the community that's behind the project and that's being built with the project. So that's why we chose that route. We had the idea ever since last year, but then we saw exactly what you're talking about, is that when you start looking at, for example, countries such as Brazil or Peru or other large countries that have rainforests, Gabon, you have Indonesia, you have all these countries that have way more vast amounts of nature and especially rainforests than us. But it's about creating a model that works, even if it's scalable. And that's the journey that we've been on. If it kind of answer your question.
Yeah, I think we also have to frame it for people that are listening in. Suriname is, like Diego said, the most forested country in the world based on percentage of land that's covered by a rainforest, which is 93%. It has been slipping, but by far now it's the biggest. We recently had Bolsonaro, the Brazilian president here. He's been known quite for using the Amazon rainforest for economic gain, simply to the fact that he says, well, listen, you guys, the rest of the world, aren't paying us to preserve our rainforest, so we're going to use it economically as well. And when he was in Suriname, he met with our president, and one of the things against it was the indigenous, who came up and were like, hey, wait a minute, you're going to work together with somebody who's known for destroying our land, and we
Exactly.
are working for our rights. And economics, the economic incentives are difficult. Just for an example, we talked about gold already, and the scallions, which take gold out of the water on
Yep.
at the lake. It's funny Diego mentioned that he listened to your
It was
episode
on.
at the
Yeah,
Fablomenstein Lake. But that's one of the biggest issues, is like you can't really promote tourism either, sustainable tourism, when you're at a touristic resort and you're standing there at a waterside and you see a scallion who is
Yeah,
busy digging gold.
every angle,
It doesn't add
every
yeah,
up.
island you're
it
looking at.
doesn't.
Yeah, it
No,
it
that's
just
true.
doesn't it just doesn't add up. To create a little, now that we have contexted like why this is such an important issue for us, what kind of solutions, if you can give us a little bit of a tip, what kind of innovative solutions do we have to preserve nature in that sense?
So it depends, right? Because um, I could be controversial about this topic, but the truth of the matter is that a lot that's being done right now is it doesn't work. It's the minimal amount of input available to actually bring on about change. So that's first, like one of the first things that created Infinity is just us being mad that there's a lot of money being spent, but no actionables, nothing that actually works. Um, so that's one. But secondly, there are, okay, maybe I could tell you my utopian dream. My utopian dream is that the worth of a, for example, let's take one tree, one standing tree in the rainforest, is that by the time that this model exists, people could look at that one tree or this plot of land and think twice before cutting down a tree, because there's maybe not equal amount of value as knocking down the tree and selling it as wood pellets, but there is value in keeping the tree alive. So now the model that works the most is carbon credits. It's a model created by the European Union. It's called the Red Plus system. Basically, that you could ask as a country, you could, if you're carbon neutral, you could ask for these carbon credits, which have a financial worth, like an economic worth, depending on who wants to buy these credits to make a company carbon neutral, right? So we have these oil companies that say that they're carbon neutral, but basically they're just buying these credits and saying, "Hey,
Yeah,
look at
I
my
have
ESGs."
my reservations about that system as well.
Exactly, and it's one of those projects that I believe doesn't work. It just can't work because what you're doing is not actually working. But we do believe that we could manipulate these exact models that are being put in, right, being backed by these large organizations, and we could create different value by basically compounding all these different models for our rainforest.
Yeah, at
Um,
that rate, it gets very complex. And the reason I mentioned before my reservation on the credits things,
mhm.
just for some context, like three for 2017, I also participated like in a hackathon in Germany during the COP 23. and it was also a blockchain based hackathon, and that gave me some perspective on how, you know, all these superpowers, these world powers, they have this meeting, policies this, policies that, and you there, you're trying to innovate, come up with solutions, etc. And this talk of carbon credits also came up, and it was clear to see, like, as you mentioned, you had this oil company is just offsetting it just to look good on paper, and in their country or wherever they're doing the production, there's still loads and loads and loads of destruction happening, even to the microplastics level. That's a whole other rabbit hole that I do not think we should go into this episode. um, but coming back to the topic of carbon credits, so one of the solutions, at least that we, as a team that was there in Suriname, uh, suggested was for us kind of like the rainforest, like tracking the rainforest, etc., trying to integrate a tag or something that you have this social, um, yeah, social control or social controller, so that people can just go if they're in a forest or something, and they scan that area, that gets tracked on the blockchain on the ledger. But then this brings problems of, you need the right institutions to be able to facilitate this. So there's a constant pressure between innovation and government and formal institutions on what's get integrated, and on the third party is the private sector kind of just chipping away at the pie.
But should
How
it
do you
be?
see?
Should it be? I'm quickly gonna jump in, Diego. Should it be that
Just
way?
yeah, just to finish the question, how do you see that dynamic, and to add to Shanluk, should it be that way?
Uh, yeah, so I don't think it should be. That's just my honest opinion. I think it should be decentralized in that sense, right? So I think the nature is something that you can't own. You can't say you own it, but you the I'm lost for words because it's the exact same thing that we're trying to fight. We're basically trying to take hands out of these organizations that are, for example, we when we started researching about Infinity and we started looking into maybe grants we could ask all these NGOs about for that we could do some work in the rainforest. We figured out that by the time that our project would be get a green check, that it would be their project, right? It wouldn't be our project anymore. So that kind of gave us the incentive also just to be like, well, basically keep it. Then we'll try to figure out a way that we could do it on our own. And that's where the idea of which you heard in the last spaces is that's why we want to create a DAO. We want to find people internationally that are invested in the same thing that we are and just do it as a community and build from there on out.
So before we go into that, you just mentioned a DAO, and for the people who don't know, a DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization. So you have these DAOs popping up like crazy, especially the
Yeah.
last year. And one around climate change that I've seen is KlimaDAO.finance. Not sure how they work in particular, but have you seen similar models, looked into these, and what are things you see like would be, while you propose that solution, what would hold people back for, I guess, mass adoption, or just starting off with a DAO? Where do you see that gap that needs to be initially filled?
I think trust, to be honest. I because there's a lot of DAOs that are basically just doing nothing, right? It's like their Links DAO is a DAO that's gonna buy a golf club, and I have a different DAO that I put money in. It's called Mad Realities, and it's basically a decentralized dating online show. And it's like you people create these crazy DAOs, and I've been looking into all of them just to figure out why are people actually interested in this? Why are they putting money into these DAOs that, like, let's say I'm in Suriname and I put in money into the Links DAO and they buy a golf club in wherever, I can't go golf there, right? But what is it? I think it's the sense of community. And maybe if I am a golfer here in Suriname, right, I feel like I belong. I have ownership. I have a part saying in some golf club in America, but it's also just the ability that we haven't been able to do that. Like, for example, I never had an opportunity to buy some or be part of some company in Russia, right? But now that possibility exists. But the DAO space is very interesting, and you have a lot of scams, what look like scams or not tangible products. So, but yeah, you have that with
Yeah, but
any
that's well,
technological advancement.
anytime something new pops around, that's how it
Exactly.
starts. That's how
Yeah.
it starts. It's also like the there's a lot of negativity around cryptocurrency and blockchain because of that, because it's new, because it starts out and it hasn't been legitimized, and then it starts becoming more legitimate, and then the kind of mass adoption comes. So, it to a certain degree, it sounds a little bit like crowdfunding, but then again, it isn't. So it's kind of this weird concept that if you're not really familiar with the space, a DAO basically says you nothing because it can be anything. Like if you're a regular person and you don't know about it, people can convince you about anything. But I love the fact that you said it has to be decentralized, and the reason it has to be centralized is just because there will be much more ownership. It's if it's decentralized. Like if it's centralized, there just has to be one person with power that doesn't find it interesting, and the project is done. Like we don't grasp how many projects that could have been helpful to society in general just get lost because of a power struggle between two people or two agencies. So I think from that perspective, we still are in a learning curve that we can understand, like, hey, wait a minute, it doesn't have to be like this. On the other side, I do have a question. I feel like in some cases we try to invent new things and come up with solutions which in the past have been there. Like for instance, I recently learned about the planning strategy of Paramaribo, where like certain streets that go from east to west all had similar kind of trees, and then from north to south as well, different kind of trees, and also depending on what kind of soil there was, and if there was a lot of water, it would be palm trees, and otherwise it would be correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not sure what kind of trees, but then came the question like, why wouldn't you, as a government, on the east-west road connecting the east and the west of Suriname, why wouldn't you along that road plant trees on the side, trees that can be used for export, that we can earn money with, and do it in such a way that it's in between and that you can grow trees and then 2 years later you can build in between them, and you can make a whole infrastructure. uh, First of all, you create a greener country. Secondly, there's less opportunity for cars to fly off the road, and third, you're actually making money from that process. And all these kind of things that were done in the past with a certain ideology are just completely lost, and it almost feels like in some cases that it's become all about, but can I earn from it? And that's why. And on one side you can be like, yeah, but it's corruption, isn't it? On the other side, like, it's a personal thing. So why don't you completely decentralize it and let other people decide if they want to be part of it, they want to earn from it? What I want to know, Tim, is like the general perception of this. Like, are there already certain projects or in certain countries that are really jumping into this space, saying like, we want to have a greener environment, want to have a better environment, and have already invested in creating a framework for sustainable environment?
Yeah, so I totally agree with you. And there have been projects. There's even projects where they try to create their own network where part of the profits go towards planting trees and whatnot. But I also don't believe in just planting trees to plant trees. Like you need to find a way to make it sustainable. Like like you said, like if it's planting trees and you could earn something or people in that community could earn something from it, then please do plant trees. But don't just plant trees because it sounds cute. But yeah, there have been projects, and I'll be honest with you. I think it could be a lot better, especially with the type of funding that they're getting. It makes me wonder if I'm crazy or if I see something that no one else is seeing. But that's also the part where I'm trying to do it myself, where I'm with people that have the same mindset. And let's try to create something that actually works. Because right now, the most of the money that goes towards preservation or goes towards climate adaptation is is just donations. It's
So
basically just free money going
before you
away.
go on, where does this
Yeah.
money come from? From donations, etc.
It's the same companies trying to be greener, right? By the end of the day, is these companies that are trying to force themselves in to invest money into green initiatives or sustainable goods. I think the only real funding, private equity funding that's being done into the greener space is for renewable energy, because I think that's something that VCs and Wall Street actually believe in, and it shows in the numbers. But other projects are just seen as handouts, as okay, we'll give some money, send us pictures of what happened, that a community has a local computer, and then we'll be happy and like just about our day. But if you want to look at real money being spent and invested, exactly greenwashing. If you if you want to look at real money being spent or invested, then you have to look at renewable energy, but also that has destructive qualities, right? Renewable energy isn't just this utopian dream. It destroys the earth in some shape or form.
Yeah, like with the
Okay,
windmills that they have to
Yeah.
bury under
quick
sand because they
quick
can't get rid of it.
controversial question around energy.
Okay.
Do you believe, or what's your stance on the energy use
Oh
around the
wow.
mining of cryptocurrencies?
Well, this is like the first question everyone asks me, right? When they hear that they tell like BTC, Bitcoin, what are you doing with the earth? It's like, okay, I get it. I get it. First of all, like the technology is changing, right? And we see that with these new coins that are popping up, such as Solana or these other fast coins that propose that they use less energy, or layer two Ethereum, where they talk about proof of stake. And so I think we're just at the forefront of technology, and the advancements still have to be made. So I think by a set of time, crypto will probably be more efficient than a normal banking network or whatever. So about that is just wait, have some faith.
There's something you said in your answer, Diego, that I'm gonna use from now on. So next time somebody asks me that, I'm gonna ask them. So how much energy did the first computer take? Remember those computers in the '60s
Those
where
big ones,
there were like 10 of those boxes that were human-sized
It's just
boxes.
exactly. It
misguided
was a whole
attention.
room.
Yeah, and
Focus.
now
Exactly.
it's a lithium battery that's like this big that has 10 or 100 times amount of the power. So basically, you can compare it to that.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like just let's all wait a little bit, have some faith, and not try to bash things because Bitcoin mining is. But it's Bitcoin mining, by the way, is really bad for your. It's like it uses a crazy amount of power. So that is one thing. But I think if you look at other networks and other coins and the technological advancements they are making, it's only the slope is only going down when it comes to energy usage.
I'm still gonna call BS on those people for now on because if you look at the ecological footprint, like
Oh,
for the
it's
past
small.
yeah. So for the past 2 years is the first time in the history that I can remember that my ecological footprint has been around. So for people that don't understand what the ecological footprint is,
Yeah,
so how
I'm
do you measure?
distracted.
So how do you measure your ecological footprint? They look at like the house you own, how much energy you consume, how much you drive your car. Do you kind of um uh, pool carpool together with other people, or take the bus or public transport, or do you have your own car or multiple cars in your house? How often do you travel? Do you take this? So basically, your ecological footprint is like how much of the earth do you consume, and they kind of the way they measure it is saying like if everybody in the world consumes the same way that you do, this is how many earths we need. So if your ecological footprint is below one, it means that if everybody lived the way that you are living, that we have enough space here on earth for all of us. My ecological footprint is like 3 or 4 earths most of the time. And the main reason why it is that much, that if everybody lived the way that I do, we would need 4 times the earth that we have now. The main reason is travel, is emissions from airplanes that I use. So whenever somebody wants to say like, yeah, but Bitcoin is destroying the earth, I'm gonna ask them like, how often do you travel a year? And then the discussion is over, because unless we realize how much emissions and how much we are damaging the earth due to the fact that there are hundreds of flights leaving every week, even from Suriname, there are hundreds of flights leaving every month. If we understand that, then we're gonna have to look at it solutions very differently, because yeah, I have to Google that quickly for you, Seth, if it's carbon footprint or ecological. I know it as ecological footprint. I know it as ecological footprint. So it's the demand on a supply of nature that you would need for yourself, and how many people, if everybody in the world used the same amount of energy and emissions that you are using, how many earths would you need? And for me, the only, due to COVID, because I haven't traveled by plane for 2 years now. That's the only reason I'm below one, because otherwise I would be like tenfold.
Yeah, that's true, and I think it is ecological footprint because that more has to do with your consumption, and carbon footprint has more to do with your emissions. So, for example, the carbon footprint of a sawmill is higher than, for example, a warum, but ecological footprint could be lower.
Yeah,
So
you
it
you you can
depends.
look it up if you search for a footprint calculator. If you go to ecological footprint calculator, if you Google it, footprintcalculator.org, you can measure for yourself, and it just says there how many planets does it take to support your lifestyle, and it's very shocking, because you will be shocked by how much you consume ecologically. But just remember that most of it's emissions from airplanes if you travel. If you don't do that, then your ecological footprint just drops drastically.
Yeah, it's crazy to just fathom how much the global supply chain with travel, logistics, etc. impacts this part of this footprint. So moving on to the next section, actually, we've talked about the climate change and greenwashing. There's a lot of conspiracy, controversy around these things. Do that with what you may. I still want to talk about the microplastic thing, but we don't have time. But
You,
coming
you
back
can put
to
it in the overrated,
yeah,
underrated, Diego. You'll find a way.
coming back to Web3 and blockchain tech. So you've told us your journey on, how you got all this passion for climate and preservation and creating a more sustainable world. What was your first encounter with the tech, like the innovation side? Like where you like it clicked? This could change, or
Um,
what was it
so
encounter for you?
so the first time I encountered anything blockchain related was I think 2012, 2011, when there was the hype about Tor browsers and being able to go on this dark market, right? And it's like, okay, so I was young, I was in the Netherlands with my best friend at that time. And we were just kind of researching, just trying to see like, yo, what is this? And I think Bitcoin price at that point was 50 euros. So it was
Oh,
still
so you owe like 50 Bitcoin now.
I
Oh, okay.
wish
You're one of the
yo,
early millionaires.
that is one of my biggest mistakes. Is using Bitcoin as like too consumptive and not seeing the future of it, right? But one problem that I did have early on was it it works, but it's not adaptable worldwide. At least at that point, it wasn't. So 2 years ago, when I started to see the changes, seeing especially the developments on Ethereum and seeing what people were really doing with the technology, like good projects, solid projects, that's when I started to see like, hey, there's a future. Maybe it's going towards the right point. And last year, was it already last year or the year before that? Wow, time goes by fast. Um, the same guy that I explored this Bitcoin with back in 2011. He came on vacation here, and we were talking, just busy talking, and he was more in the space. So shout out Jafinchi, Rajiv Kamperfe. And he was kind of really telling
We're
me like,
still
hey,
trying to get him on.
yeah, good luck with that, buddy. Good luck with that. You're not probably not gonna happen. But hey, G, if you happen to watch it, please come on this space. He has a great mind too, and he was telling us about these layered NFTs and NFTs that could change depending on the time and have different properties. So that's when we really started to look at, yo, we could use this for the greater good. We could start using this technology just to help bring on change. So I think, yeah, 2 years ago, that's when it really started popping off for me, clicking. Yep.
And for you, just out of curiosity, what projects, which either blockchain, crypto, or NFT projects have you been interested in? Have you said like I want to dabble a little bit, and this sounds like a project that I would invest in?
Mm, Currently, I would say I've been into the Solana space with gaming NFTs because I've seen a few projects there that I really like, and also they have Justin Khan, which I look up to in certain senses. So he launched Fractal, and I've been invested into Fractal ever since a little bit, but also Genies, which is I think on the Flow blockchain, the Flow network. I think a project of Dapper Labs, and I love all Dapper Lab. Most
Yeah,
of the Dapper Lab products, right?
yeah. Dapper
They're
Labs
good.
is
Yeah, I
yeah.
like Dapper Lab. So NFL All Day, NBA Top Shot. I like those two projects. And which one? I think that's it for now. Basically, yeah, that's it. And but I just like products with real world utility, basically, right? It's like a way that you could bridge those two, not fully meta based, but having more so just a bridge because I'm still alive here and I need to be able to make it part of my life. Those are the best projects for me.
How
So,
hard?
so not a picture online. By the way, people, this is
No.
not financial advice. We just
No, it's
asked
not.
him a personal question.
Yes, it's not financial advice. Don't lose money.
Just following on that curiosity trail, how hard or what challenges did you face from being back here in Suriname
Mhm.
to stay in touch with the space, to interact with the space, to interface, just being able to invest? Because we talked about, venture capital, stocks. There's a lot of barriers there. But for you in the blockchain space, NFT space, crypto space, how easy was it for you, or how difficult was it for you?
For me, it was really easy, right? Because I just asked someone that was already into the space, like, hey, I want to start. I could give you fiat. Do you want to just help me out? And he was more than kind to help me out. So yeah, it really started for me. It was easy. It was just really asking for help. I've heard stories of people that had $0 that's like no ability to get any crypto in any form, but they were in a Discord server and they asked someone for, hey, yo, do you want to faucet me some money so I could start? And people are like, hey, yeah, why not? So
That's
for
also how scams happen, though.
yeah, no, okay, yeah. So please don't take it as advice. But I've seen good things happen. But yeah, I've had my fair share of learning what a scam is. So yeah,
Yeah, especially now it's getting more mainstream. People are,
it's getting crazy, right?
misusing it. In the early
Yeah,
days, there was a lot of good intent, but now with new
it's
blood
There's
coming in,
always been good intent. It's just,
yeah,
it's just,
and bad intent.
it's just when there's so much good intent, people try to benefit from it as well. That's also just a general problem.
And they also use FOMO, right? So like FOMO is like the killer of all things for people because I've seen it in the Fractal Discord where they were able to hack the Discord and someone just dropped a link and it was saying mint. So people clicked on it like crazy and they lost all their whole wallet worth of salt. And thankfully, they have a millionaire startup founder. So he's like, "Hey, I'll give everybody back their money." But in other cases, it's just bye bye, right? You just lost it. Empty the wallet, buy, gone. But that's because of FOMO, because people wanted to be the first to mint, right? So they
I
just
won't
click
call
on
it
everything.
FOMO. It's greed. I
Yeah,
just say
greed.
greed. People just want to get, to get rich quick, and that's
Exactly.
something that's so easy to pry
Oh
on.
yeah, and in Suriname, there's somebody commenting that already. A Cam went viral on socials as Kevin Suriname, as grassroots is commenting. Yes, that's something we're kind of very prone. I think the first ever official social conference, Diego and I went on a rant about how kind of the most popular crypto blockchain related projects in Suriname have been scams, which is why
Yeah.
also a lot of people have been really skeptical, and that's why we think it's important to have somebody like Givenchy on here to kind of tell the other side of it as well.
Awesome. I think we have just enough time to switch over to over and underrated. So, Tim, we're gonna give you some topics briefly. Can be random. I'm thinking of a few now, and you just give your take if you think it's an underrated subject or an overrated subject, and if possible, you could give a brief explanation. So,
Sounds
you wanna
good.
kick it off, Jean-Luc?
You want me to kick it off?
Or
Okay.
I
No,
got
no,
one.
it's
I got
good.
one.
It's okay. It's good. So, Timothy, first off, physical art, physical artwork. Is it overrated or underrated?
Uh, that's a difficult one.
I see some
Uh,
artwork behind you there.
yeah, so I really love artwork, physical or digital, doesn't matter. But at this point, I'm gonna say underrated.
All right, here comes the controversial one: recycling.
That's overrated. That's a scam. Don't plastic recycling is a scam, at least. Other forms of recycling, they have some utility, but plastic recycling is a scam. Please look it up, do your research.
Okay, could you, for those who haven't done, kind of give a little tippy toe into the waters on the most important aspects?
Okay, so plastic recycling isn't profitable. There's no sustainable way of actually to recycle plastic, and it just loses quality over time. So after one time recycling, which already degrades the quality of the plastic, is just not useful. China stopped importing plastic, so basically no one else is willing to pick up your plastic, and
Yeah, they were the biggest importer.
they were. And you have some third world countries that are developing countries, my bad, that are trying to do it, but it's just dirty work. People really have to go through a lot of waste and pick out the plastic. Plus, not all plastic is recyclable, even though people say that it is. So plastic is, we need to get rid of plastic, but it's difficult because it's actually useful.
Whew, okay, so let's stay in that kind of area topic. Electric cars.
A little bit overrated. But I want to say Tesla is a little bit overrated, specifically. Just electric cars are, they're a little bit underrated, but Tesla specifically is a little bit overrated. That's all I could say.
Jab on Elon.
I don't love Elon Musk. I really don't love him. I think Elon is a scam.
Okay, okay. I was gonna ask Elon, but
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, I don't
I was
believe in
gonna
him.
ask about Elon, but let's switch to another Twitter personality.
Okay, go to Bill
Uh,
Gates. Just kidding, just kidding.
Richard Branson.
Man, ask me about better guys, just not these. Like I have this thing about these old white guys, or these that are just there. I just go to space. That's what I should say. Just I wish them a lot of luck with that journey.
Okay, yes. I'll throw in my last one immediately. Space travel.
You still have
Uh,
one for me, Diego.
I do believe in space travel. So but commercial space travel is overrated. But actual expeditions to find usable things, that's underrated. Because I think the focus has been on commercial. space travel, right? Just
Yeah, the latest developments have been
yeah.
going into that direction. Uh, but yeah, one more for you, Jean-Luc, and then we can.
Yeah, if I'm allowed, I want to jump in because it said come with more interesting names. So I'm gonna go with Ricardo Semler.
Hmm. Mm. Oh, it's still over underrated. I'll say underrated just because not a lot of people know about him. At least a lot of people know about Elon Musk, just the name, right? But not actually what he does or what he doesn't do. And I think people like Ricardo are people that they deserve more limelight, at least for people to decide if they like them or not.
All right.
Awesome. And I think then that's a wrap for the over underrated. So to close this off, can you tell us a bit more about Infinity specifically? At what stage are you guys at? What can people expect? What are people looking forward to, and what are you personally looking forward to in the next few months?
Thank you. So Infinity right now we're at a stage where we're really trying to connect with the people, like-minded people. We're basically filling up our team members before we start launching our website and our roadmap and do all of that. We have currently, I think, a team of 5 members, and which 4 of the original members are Surinamese, which was for me something major that I wanted to do before you get to the international community and they basically coup your whole project, right? That you at least have locals that are invested in the same idea and the same mindset. And I also want to just basically create the space for other like-minded people that are willing to just solve this problem, to join the team and see how they could be part of this thing that we're trying to figure out. Because that's one thing, we have a roadmap of products that we will launch, but our main product that's creating that economic value for our rainforest, I think that's a long-term project, and that's just a dream that we believe in creating.
So if people want to reach out to you, they hear this, they're like, okay, sounds interesting. We want to do something with it. How can they reach out to you?
Well, you could connect me on Twitter because I'm active on Twitter. You can find me at Goudzand, like Goudzand Day, so Goudzand Day Day, if that makes sense.
What you
Um,
complicate?
We can put it up. Hold on, give me a second. Yeah,
We'll put it up in a second.
yeah.
yeah, so that's the easiest way, or LinkedIn if you want to have a more professional space. But yeah, that's those are my 2 main places.
Okay, so I'm gonna cheat last one since you only mentioned Twitter. Is Twitter your main social platform that you use?
Yeah, definitely. I like Twitter ever since way back. I think 2009. That was the first year I got on Twitter. 2009.
All right.
Amazing
And
platform.
last question here for our public, for our viewer. Local, do you need to reside in Suriname at the moment?
Of course not. We're looking for Surinamese people all over the world. That's key. So if you feel like you're interested in this project or you want to help or just be part of the team, connect. Let's connect. Let's see what we could do together. And
Yeah,
there's
I
a
think.
lot. I
Sorry,
want
go
to
ahead.
say there's a lot of interesting Surinamese people that are busy also in Web3 that are not in Suriname, but they're just really busy trying to figure shit out for themselves. So yeah, I want to connect with all of them.
Yeah, if we can find them, get them on. We need to spotlight them a bit more.
I'll be an ambassador for the show. Definitely.
Awesome. So there's your answer, Saf. So just FYI, Saf is in Sweden at the moment. So if you need something from the Scandinavian, someone from the Scandinavian area, there you
Could
go.
definitely help. Yeah.
All right. I think that's a wrap for today. So, Jean-Luc, any last announcement? Anything people should look forward to for later today, since that's a special
Yeah,
event?
if you're into sports, of course, we have a Lucky Day exclusive coming on later today. We're gonna be live, or at least I'm gonna be live in the stadium covering the match, the pregame during the break, and after the postgame interviews. We're gonna do it there, so that will be a lot of fun. Of course, for social convos, we'll just be back next week as usual. And we're really happy to have Timothy as one of our alumni now, even saying he's going to support the program. I completely agree with Timothy on Twitter. If you're a Web3 enthusiast, if you're really in connecting with everybody all over the world, really make sure that you step your Twitter game up. And if you have an old account which you used as a
L-
teenager, it's
legacy account.
okay. It
Yeah.
no, it's okay to make a new one. Or at least delete all of your old tweets. I would recommend that as well. But definitely Twitter is definitely the space to connect with the rest of the world. And if you're especially if you're into Web3. So that's it from my side.
Yeah, awesome.
Timothy, we really want to thank you for being part of Social Confoes. Diego, this was Social Confoes. I guess
Until
we're
next
gonna
week,
until
and
next week. See you.
Thank you,
Bye bye.
guys.
peace.
Bye bye.